We do need the
Hey, I would kill for that imposter video to have an imposter video. More content about that.
I'd love to see a video on the ultimate imposter.
Well, alright then. Hey everybody, TinyLeaf here, and I love Byakuya Twogami. Ew, no, not that one. Yeah, that one. If you're familiar with any of my previous work, you probably already know that I love the ultimate imposter, or Twogami, as the fanbase likes to call them. They might have only been in a fraction of the second game and a few scenes in the anime, but they are my absolute favorite Danganronpa character. And if you create any fan art of them, you're automatically a cool dude in my books. After a lot of people encouraged me to make my April Fool's Day wish come true, I've decided to treat myself and talk about why I love them so much while I draw them. Apparently, I'm not the only person starving for more Ultimate Imposter content, and who am I to deny the needs of my comrades? If you're expecting this to be unbiased and completely factual, you best show yourself out right now. Because today, we're talking about 5 reasons why I love the Ultimate Imposter. Because everything is easier in a numbered list. Reason number 1, their impersonation of Byakuya. So when first booting up Goodbye Despair, the player is led to believe that this is the same Byakuya Twogami that we met in Trigger Happy Havoc, and that he's just put on a little weight since the ending. And the meta surrounding his portrayal supports this. Their sprite poses are identical, the voice actor is the same, the CG is the same. Outside of fatness, the only cosmetic difference is that Byakuya wears black and the imposter wears white. You see, it's a metaphor. Twogami's behavior also matches Byakuya's on a superficial level. They're condescending, make a big deal out of their family name, view everybody as being beneath them, are pretty rude at times, blah 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 blah. We know the drill. And given the upfront confirmation that everybody's memories have been wiped upon arriving at Jabberwock Island, you may not even look too closely at the fact that Byakuya is unfamiliar with Monokuma and the Killing Game. And when I first played the game, I sure didn't. I didn't even really question the weight gain. It was a choice, to be sure, but the trope of a character suddenly becoming fat after experiencing severe trauma is pretty common, and I really didn't put it past the game to use it as an excuse to make a bunch of fat jokes. But that's besides the point. For most of the prologue, Twogami does a good job of acting like the Byakuya that we've come to know and, in my case, tolerate. But do you want to know my first clue that something was up with Byakuya here? How fast their disposition changes the second a serious threat is introduced to the island. Immediately, they begin talking about the practicality of the situation, like what the students need to do to stay safe, and they establish themselves as the leader of the students. And while there is some pushback over them being too forceful, they also make this comment. Who are you, and what have you done with the real Byakuya? To provide some context, I picked up Goodbye Despair shortly after my friend Vaughn and I finished watching the Game Grumps Trigger Happy Havoc playthrough, and I wasn't really looking forward to another adventure with Byakuya, because as much fun as I have bullying him, he's also committed several crimes against my well-being. But this Byakuya, while his words are the same, his attitude feels very different. His status as the ultimate affluent progeny is not used as justification to keep everyone at a distance, but as the reason why he has to work more closely with everybody else. The students needed a leader, and he has the duty as someone of high pedigree to fulfill that role. Like, it's still condescending, yeah. The real Byakuya is too, and that would be something the ultimate imposter would have to incorporate into their impersonation of him. But why doesn't the ultimate imposter exhibit more of Byakuya's negative traits? Some people think that maybe the ultimate imposter doesn't know any different, and that does hold some water. I, however, prefer the interpretation that it's not that the ultimate imposter doesn't know, it's that they're unwilling to be needlessly rude and selfish towards the rest of the students. Hajime even notices with some surprise how Twogami isn't as much of a jerk as he initially thought. Even with a bit of a rough exterior, you can tell how much they care about everybody else. And this is best demonstrated, in my opinion, by how they wind up as the first victim of the Killing Game. By charging forwards to stop Nagito from grabbing the knife underneath the table and getting stabbed by Teru. It's one of the few instances where the victim of a chapter gets killed while trying to protect their class without resorting to murder, and they're actively trying to prevent it from happening. It speaks volumes about their character that they immediately put themselves at risk so that they might prevent the Killing Game from happening. just like they said they would. Byakuya Twogami, who survived the first killing game all the way through, ends up dying as the first victim of the second one because he tries to stop it from ever getting started. That's a level of heroism that I didn't expect, and it was already enough to earn my love. But it doesn't end there. Reason number 2. They are nice. Alright, pop quiz. Who's the nicest character in Danganronpa?
No, that's wrong.
Okay, but let's be serious for a second. I do love morally gray, cutthroat characters, to be sure. But I'm a complete sucker for kind-hearted people too. I mean, look at my real tier list, for crying out loud. But we did not get a whole lot of the Imposter in their debut game, even if you could find the Mono Mono machine. Like I didn't. However, the Danganronpa 3 anime, which was a bit to try and figure out how to pirate to obtain legally, is one of the few times where you see Twogami's true colors shine. They strike a deal with the ultimate animator, Ryota Miturai, because Ryota wants to stay indoors and work on his animation. So he allows the Imposter to impersonate him and go to class in his place. That's a pretty sweet deal for the Imposter, and their relationship could have stayed there. But Twogami continues to look after Ryota on their own time, encouraging him to look after his health, bringing food for him to eat while he works, and really just chatting with him. While I doubt anybody with a shred of humanity would have let Ryota die and starve to death, Twogami wasn't obligated to do anything past their initial interaction. They even risked their true identity by bringing Mikan in when Ryota was on the verge of death. Also, I do have to highlight this scene.
I've seen enough movies to know this is the part where you kill me!
No one's gonna kill you.
Then this is the part where I show how grateful I am? It's just, I've never done this sort of thing before, so you'll have to be patient with me.
No need for that. I know that I can trust you, Sumiki.
You just said you trust me?
What an absolute Chad. V3's Ultimate Talent Development Plan showcases the Imposter's personality as well. Even though it is non-canonical, it offers some valuable insight about what the Imposter is like under normal circumstances and confirms some of their traits from the anime. They're kind to nearly everybody they speak to, emphasis on nearly, regularly worry about students who might be neglecting their health, talk up the students who are currently down in the dumps, and generally help out wherever they're needed. I don't think it's a stretch to say that quite a few of the characters have a mean streak or at least an unpleasant side of them, especially within this class in particular. Do you know how many times I was ready to throttle Hyoko and Komaeda? So many times! Then again, the bar was already set pretty low given that we have the literal Yakuza there. But the Imposter's kindness is one that, by and large, dominates their personality, even if they presently have to pretend to be someone a little bit meaner. Reason number 3. The tragic backstory. Now everybody in Goodbye Despair has some baggage, or at least a good number of them do. We've got some healthy doses of abuse, friendless backgrounds, loss, poverty, bullying, the whole 9 yards. However, Twogami's backstory is one that I'm especially drawn to because of how it relates to their ultimate talent. Basically, they were born with no identity of their own. No family, no name, not even their sex is known. The only thing they've ever had is their talent to impersonate somebody else. That's how they get by. And outside of that, we aren't given much information about what Twogami had to go through up until the events of the second game. What kind of pain have they experienced and have never been able to share because it would out them? How have they managed to survive so long having nothing but their ultimate talent? It reinforces that notion that their lack of identity is their identity, and it's incredibly tragic. It puts some of their actions in the game and in the anime in a different light, knowing how isolating their background was. While I was skimming back through Chapter 1, I saw this moment right here where Hyoko gives them the nickname Ham Hands, and their reaction is surprisingly heartbreaking. It's not a nice nickname, but it is something that's unique to them. And it's pretty likely that the reason they look after Ryota so closely is because he's the only person who knew the truth. Imagine if something did happen to Ryota. Who else would the Imposter have to call their friend? Perhaps no one. Even their moments with Hajime before they die, you can see how much they wish to share the truth with somebody, anybody. But then again, there's that uncertainty. The group needs a promising leader like Byakuya to take care of them. not some nameless nobody who's really only good at stealing someone else's name. I can imagine a lonely imposter eating at a fast food restaurant because that's the only thing that feels like home as they try to figure out who they will masquerade as next. I almost drew that instead, but that meant I have to draw backgrounds, and that sure wasn't going to happen. But I digress. Knowing so little of their backstory, it makes me even happier to imagine what life is like for them after the events of the anime and as they get to know their classmates as themselves. I know that by the end they still prefer masquerading as someone different, but one day that could change. Who will they become? Well, that's entirely up in the air. Reason number 4. They're fat. I swear this isn't a fetish thing. Give me a second. So I don't think it's too radical for me to say that Danganronpa is not exactly the most diverse when it comes to different body types. And I can certainly talk about the broader sociological implications of that, but if I'm being real with you, it's also because it's just boring to have a cast that's full of the same shaped characters. The artist in me weeps. So while I'm like 80% sure that the only reason the ultimate imposter is fat is to help distinguish that they're not the real Byakuya Twogami, it's a breath of fresh air. I like seeing fat characters who are shown to be genuinely good people and aren't depicted as dumb, creepy slobs. Granted, Twogami isn't exempt from some other stereotypes and is often the butt of the joke there. That, I wish, was handled differently. But all things considered, it also could have been worse. While everybody else may make jokes and comments about their weight, Twogami is quite comfortable and proud of their fatness. They love fast food and sugar and carbs, and I like that. I have a lot of beef with society's obsession with weight loss and dieting, so I appreciate any character who gives that a big middle finger. Plus, it's awesome that the imposter is shown to be fast on their feet, strong, smart, and capable of defending themselves. Obviously, people are going to have different attitudes towards their own body, and I'm not about to police that. But it's rare that a Danganronpa character talks about the way they look with such positivity and self-acceptance. And for a character that has one of the most unique body types that a lot of people in society would consider undesirable, that's even better. Also, look at them in the anime. Listen to their voice!
I am not what I seem, but
I'm still one of you. What the hell, dude? The one you call Mitarai is nothing more than a super high school level imposter. I used his identity since I lack one of my own.
The ultimate imposter is attractive, inside and out. And they're fun to draw too. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Please make more art of them, please, I can't do it alone. And reason number 5, they're fun to make headcanons about. Okay, you can click off the video right now if you really want to, because this stuff is mostly going to be headcanons and sort of little things that I like to think about. So take this next section with a grain of salt and realize that it's all solely based on the vibes. If you haven't caught on by this point by my use of gender-neutral pronouns, I'm a big fan of the interpretation that the ultimate imposter is non-binary. Is it canon? Psh, who cares about canon? It hasn't stopped me from headcanoning every other character as asexual. And arguably, there's more in-game support for it than not. Not that you really need in-game support anyways. But I certainly don't have a problem with people using he/him when referring to the ultimate imposter. Plenty of non-binary folk do too. But there's not a whole lot of fat characters out there who are non-binary, and it's just kind of a fun interpretation to have to shake it up a little. Twogami is also one of the few characters where I really like almost every ship I've seen them in. Mahiru, Ibuki, Hajime, Mikan, Ryota, sometimes multiple of them at the same time. It's one of the rare instances where I understand the appeal behind all of the pairings. I'm really not big on shipping in general, which is a conversation for another day, but the imposter stands out in that regard. To go on record, my favorite is Tabuki. It's not only a super cute ship name, but the dynamic of somebody who's serious but lacks an identity pairing up with someone who's wild and values individuality is perfect. There's so much room for bonding between them, and I really like their dynamic. Not to mention that Ibuki really looks up to them and doesn't seem put off by their weight in the slightest. Circling back to UTDP, one of the recurring details I like is that Twogami is very knowledgeable about food, the importance of body fat, because despite what society tells us, it is in fact essential, and how to eat right in order to keep up energy. I like to believe if they start developing their own identity that they become a nutritionist or a therapist that helps people who struggle with eating disorders. Their true personality when they're not impersonating Byakuya is very comforting, so I think they find success in that market. Either that or they really get into like fashion designing or cosplaying or something of that extent, or even acting. They would also be really good when like coaching acting. And this last little tidbit is something I just thought about. But you know how the ultimate imposter is shown impersonating Byakuya during their time as the ultimate despair? Imagine the real Byakuya finally escapes Hope's Peak Academy and immediately is decked in the face by some outsider thinking he was the imposter. Funniest shit I've ever seen. But anyways, that's going to be about it for my little sermon about the ultimate imposter. This video breaks from my formula, but I'm currently in a less than ideal setting to do any live action recordings, but I was still feeling that kind of creative itch to get something put out there, so I thought I'd go a little easier on myself and do a little video that's kind of less highly produced. But there's also a lot of other characters in Danganronpa that I feel like don't get too much attention outside of shipping or comedic gags. So if this is something you'd like to see me do again in the future, let me know. There's a couple of characters I've already got on my mind, and I sort of fell into a fwag state and wrote something about Nagito. So, yeah, just let me know. But anyways, I've got to go. Until we meet again, take care everybody, and have a nice summer. This is TinyLeaf, signing off.